Welcome to the Access Control Coaching Session. This one's going to be very exciting. My name is Cole Nebaker. I am the Training and Events Manager for PDK, and I am joined today with Greg Steinecke from ASSA ABBLOY.
Thank you, Cole. I'm with ASSA ABBLOY. I'm an electromechanical specialist, so one of my roles is to support both the OEMs and the integrators out there. So looking forward to today's session.
Very good.
I want to remind you guys to like and subscribe and hit that notification button to make sure that you're getting those notifications for new content.
All right, so without any further delay, I'm sorry, Jordan, before you change slides, don't let me forget to tell everyone to leave your comments and questions in the comment box, because we will be covering those at the end of the session. It will be a live Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Jordan. I messed it up. Okay. So, starting with what a wireless lock set is. A wireless lock set is going to be wireless in both its communication and power capabilities. So they're typically battery powered. Now the one you see up there on the screen is an IN100, and it functions with just a couple of batteries inside of it. And it will read key cards or pins on that device, because I do believe the new IN100s have a keypad, is that right?
Keypad will be available beginning next year.
Okay, perfect. I thought I had seen something about that. Now, wireless lock sets can offer features like keyless entry, remote locking and unlocking through the PDK system, the access logs through PDK.io's reporting tab, and then in integration with PDK.io directly, which is what we're going to cover today.
All right, when you hear the term Aperio, I want you to think of real-time wireless. Aperio is a wireless lock technology that is global. It allows you to expand your access control footprint quickly and easily and affordably, and it connects to your existing access control platform. It's available across multiple brands within the ASSA ABBLOY family, and it provides real-time communication, and it consumes low energy for a longer battery life. On this slide, we're showing how a traditional access control system is wired up. Typically, you have wires going from your software to your access control network, which contains your control panel and your door controllers. From the door controller, you're running wires to the door to cover your request to exit, your door position sensor, your card reader, and your electric lock set. When we add Aperio to this system, the Aperio hub is going to be wireless from the hub to the door or to your reader device, and all of your pieces that go around the door are now going to be combined into that lock set. So you'll see that the reader, your request to exit, your door position, and your electric lock are now all integrated into one product on the door. The hub is then connected to the access control network. In this case with PDK, it's going to be connected via Ethernet protocol.
So there's a few advantages of using wireless lock sets in the first place. The first is going to be the flexibility with a wireless lock set. You can install these things just about anywhere. Now, in a few slides, Greg's going to cover the different models that Aperio offers. It's very diverse. So there are a lot of applications that you may not otherwise be able to accommodate without a wireless lock set. On top of that, it's very scalable. This is something that PDK itself is known for with the Red 1, Red 2, Red 4, Red 8, and Red Max. But in the case of a wireless lock set, it's very easy to install anywhere from just a single wireless lock set all the way up to dozens or even hundreds of wireless lock sets. And on top of that, it's all very cost effective. Instead of having to drill through doors or run wire runs in cases where it may not be feasible or even practical to without excessive labor, it becomes very cost effective to default to a wireless lock set instead of a wired lock set. And then, of course, not to ignore the final one, which is just convenience. It is very convenient to install. It reduces the amount of labor time, as I mentioned, and allows you to prioritize your time on other bigger things. So here's a few use cases for Aperio lock sets. We've got education, of course, which is a huge PDK vertical right now. These allow you to do remote lockdowns, even on classroom doors. it is not always practical to install access control on each individual classroom door. So the ability to install a wireless lock set on those classroom doors is very helpful. Healthcare is another one. When you pair it with ANSI and BHMA grade 1 hardware for the highest degree of physical security, that gives you some of the capabilities you need to accommodate a healthcare install. A couple of other ones that I personally am very familiar with are commercial and multifamily as well. Commercial, of course, you have a wide variety of Aperio products, including the R100, the S100, the L100, and the R100, and also the IN100. I neglected to put that in there. It can reduce costly wire runs associated with commercial. And then multifamily, of course, you can install these wireless lock sets on residential doors or perhaps common entry doors as well to accomplish an easier install with a more diverse range of capabilities. All right, so I'll turn it over to you, Greg. We've got our portfolio.
Okay, jumping into the portfolio, we're going to start off with the Aperio hub. The hub that integrates with PDK is our AH40 hub, which we talked about a little bit before, which is an IP-based hub. This hub can do up to 64 devices per hub. It's powered via PoE or external power supply. This can be mounted to the wall or the ceiling. If it's mounted to the ceiling, we do recommend you use the external antenna. And as you can see here with the wireless coverage, you get two different wireless shapes going from the hub depending on which antenna you're using, the internal antenna or the external antenna. This hub is also going to be static IP, so we're going to make sure we have to get those settings and an available IP address that we can assign to it. The next we'll start off with the IN100. If you haven't noticed a theme already, but the 100 is our theme and our part number that calls out that it is an Aperio lock set. So whenever you see that 100 there, you'll know that it's Aperio based. The IN100 is available from multiple brands with Corbin, Russwin, and Sargent within the ASSA ABBLOY family. These are paired up with grade 1 hardware. It's available in a cylindrical lock, a mortise lock, a multi-point lock, or exit device configurations. These also come with multi-class technology readers that have the HID technology baked into them, and it will read multiple credential types. The ES100 is slightly more affordable, and this is paired up with an electric strike. This is provided from HES, and they've paired it up with their 1500 and their 1600 series strikes. The 1500 being able to accommodate up to a 3/4 inch latch bolt, and the 1600 going up to 1 inch. This is a great affordable solution. You've got a little bit of cable going from the reader to the strike, and the batteries in the reader actually power the electric strike. So this is a wireless solution for you, and if the strike is the solution you want to go for, this is a great one. Next we have the R100. The R100 is just a wireless reader. The benefits of this one is it can be mounted to any surface. As we know, glass is becoming more and more popular these days in commercial and other applications, and we don't want to have to run wire or wire mold down a glass storefront. So with this wireless solution, we can adhere this straight to the glass. It's going to communicate to the hub wirelessly. With this solution, you'll want to take note that it does require you to hardwire your lock, your REX, and your DPS back to the PDK controller. This is also a great pedestal solution when it comes to gates. The DL100 is paired up with a dead latch from Adams Right. This works great with aluminum storefronts. If your storefront already has the existing MS prep on the door, you can take that dead bolt or swing bolt out and put this dead latch right in its place. This is going to be paired up again with the same reader. It's going to be powered by 2 AA lithium batteries, and that reader is going to power and function that door lock. The DR100 is the newest to the Aperio family. This is a wireless card reader with inputs and relays. So you have inputs and outputs that are configurable. This one can be dry, the relays or the outputs on this can be dry or wetted. If the outputs are wetted, that means you have that voltage available right there at the relay to function and power your lock. This gives you real-time monitoring with door position and recs. The only unique thing about this one is it does require hardwire power. This is not a battery-powered device. You'll see here that you have a short cable between the reader and the input-output module. That can be mounted on the same side of the door or the opposite side of the door, putting it into the secure space.
All right, so getting into the functionality integrated into PDK-IO. So the nice thing about Aperio is it provides a lot of outputs that PDK can then pick up and implant into our software. So you get the usability and user-friendliness of the PDK-IO software associated with the wireless lock. So first things first, we've got the battery status monitoring, which I think is probably the most beneficial part of this integration. You can see in real time whether the batteries need to be changed. Now, there's a certain lifespan associated with the batteries. It's all in the Aperio specifications, but this will provide you real-time battery status and even notifications if you want to be notified when the batteries are running low. You also have the live status in logs and the remote management. So the live status and logs, that's going to be some combination of the door states page where you can see if a door is locked or unlocked in real time. And then your logs will be a part of the reporting functionality under PDK's reports and also our live events. So if somebody gains access at a door with an Aperio lock set, you can see that in real time within PDK software. For the remote management portion, this also means that you can interact with these wireless locks in real time. So you can pop them open remotely, and you can set timers and do not disturbs, and as we mentioned for schools, even perform lockdowns on these devices whenever you need.
So one of the most important factors here is to take a little bit of time before you get to your deployment and do some pre-deployment planning. When it comes to Aperio, we want to make sure we're covering the hub placement, making sure that we're putting it in the area that's going to give us the best coverage depending on the antenna that we're using. You're also going to want to gather your hub IP setup information. Having this ready to go before your deployment is going to make things run a lot smoother. The other thing that's available is a wireless survey. It's important to know that the Aperio does work on the 2.4 gigahertz band. So we want to make sure that we have open channels to use along this band, and we can do that by coming out and doing a wireless survey to find out where the least amount of activity lies. The next step here is you want to make sure at least 24 hours before your installation that you're requesting a site-specific Aperio encryption key. This is going to be a form that you fill out, send to our tech support, and they'll reply with this encryption key file back to you. You'll also want to make sure you have the latest version of the Aperio programming application software that will be used to program and pair up your locks with the hub. You'll need your Aperio USB radio dongle. This is a little USB radio dongle that's going to connect to your laptop and give you the capability to communicate to the Aperio devices. As a backup, you want to make sure that you have a USB-A to USB mini cable and a USB-A to USB micro cable. With these two cables, we can connect directly to the locks to do any programming or firmware upgrades that we need to do. The picture that we see here, you can see how the Aperio channels, which use the Zigbee channels, overlay on your common Wi-Fi along that 2.4 gigahertz frequency. This is where we can select at least up to 3 channels here that are going to give us the best capability to communicate wirelessly. With this slide, we can see the Aperio hub placement and its orientation comes into play with the system. The hub transmission pattern changes depending on the antenna that we use. If we use the internal antenna, we're going to get more of this football shape going out 80 feet and 40 feet at its widest point. If we use the external antenna, we're going to get more of a donut shape, being 40 feet radius. It's important to note that these are conservative numbers, and they do include penetrating 2 standard construction walls. So taking into consideration the building construction, any metal barriers, this may increase or decrease your coverage area. We also want to look at your lock placement and your lock density. We don't want the hub to be more than 16 feet above the lock itself. In a hallway configuration, that's where using that internal antenna, mounting it on the wall is going to give you that best coverage along doors shooting down a corridor. And we also want to be aware of any other RF transmitters in the area and make sure we're placing our hub a good 3 to 6 feet away from any other transmitters. When it comes to the actual installation of the wireless hub, this is where we're taking note of how we're going to power it, whether we're going to go PoE or external power supply. You want to make sure you're using one or the other and not both. Take note of if we're mounting to the ceiling or the wall, do we need to order the external antenna or are we planning on using the internal antenna? You'll also note there in the bottom right that there is a jumper on the back of the hub to select which antenna we plan on using. Then we're going to use the Aperio programming application to set up our hub and pair it with locks. We also have a little display here showing you what the LED on the hub, what that pattern is going to tell you. This is an important piece for troubleshooting, so we want to make sure we're paying attention to that and it's visible when we're doing the setup. One thing that we really press or try to comment on to our integrators is make sure you're taking the time to look at the overall health of the opening that you're going to be working on. We want to make sure it's functioning well before we touch it. Oftentimes, once you touch a door and you make a modification to the door, in the eyes of the customer, you're the one that's responsible for it not working. So take a moment, check those gaps between the door and the frame, make sure there's not excessive gaps there or if they're tight gaps. We want to make sure the door is going to open and close smoothly. We want to check that closer for any leaking. If you see any signs of oil coming out of that closer, that means air has gotten into it and it's compromised that closer. It's not going to work as needed. Check for rubbing anywhere around the door and any excessive holes or damage that might be hiding underneath a cover plate or maybe a larger lock set that's been on the door prior to you touching it. With this slide, we're pointing out when it comes to installing your Aperio device on the door or inside the opening, you'll have all of the instructions that you need will come with the device itself and just follow the instructions that you have. We also have these available online and you want to match it up to the specific lock set that you're using. We also have door prep templates that can go on there. If your doors are being prepped by somebody else, we can get that template to them to make sure it's done correctly.
All right. So now that we're getting back into the configuration side of things, the first thing we need to do is configure a static IP for both the cloud node on PDK side as well as the AH40 hub. So from the cloud node side, what you're going to do to get the IP address is ping using your command prompt. So I have it for both Windows and Mac OS. We've got ping-4 cloud node serial number .local. So it'll be a 107 something 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 .local. Ping that and it will ping back with your cloud node's IP address. Same thing goes for Mac OS. Now it is preferred that you set an IP reservation on the client's network for the cloud node as opposed to setting a static IP on the cloud nodes directly. It's just easier that way and leads to less problems in the future if you ever do change network configurations. So what I would note is take meticulous notes of the settings that you configure the cloud node to on the network. Not only are you going to need that for the AH40 configuration, you're going to need it down the road if you ever make changes on the network. But if you do need to set a static IP on the cloud node directly, reach out to PDK's tech support. And one of the notes as we were reviewing this presentation yesterday, it does take a few minutes for the static IP on the cloud nodes to address itself and reconfigure itself on the network. So be patient with it, give it anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, if it's still not back up, just give it a good power cycle and it should be up and running.
So with this piece here, we're showing you, we're getting into the Aperio programming application. This is going to show you the steps it's going to take to set up the software for your first time or for this particular site. And we'll walk through how to pair a lock with a hub. So to start off, we're going to put in our installation or our site name. And then you're going to put a unique password for this specific site, following the password recommendation or the password requirements there. And then the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to associate with this file or with this site our Aperio encryption key. Now this is going to be that form that you filled out prior to your installation, send it off to tech support, and they'll send you back this XML file. You're going to store that on your laptop at this point, and you're going to associate it with this site here as you create it. So once you select your file, you're going to hit create, and now your site's going to be up and running. If we look down on the bottom left-hand corner at this point, we can see that our radio dongle is not connected to our computer. So you'll take this dongle and now you will go ahead and plug that in, and this should turn green once the computer recognizes that it's there. Now that we're all set up and everything's colored in, we can do a quick scan. Quick scan is going to scan the default radio channels coming from the factory and find any hubs that are within that coverage area that your laptop is in. Once we find this hub, we can select Show Details. This is going to communicate to the hub and pull up what the hub's current information and configuration is. And from here, we can see all of the hub information. We're going to right-click on here and we're going to select Pair with Lock or Sensor. And if we keep an eye on our hub, we can see how the LED is going to change, letting us know that the hub is now in pairing mode. We're going to get a solid amber. Now we've got our 30-second timer. We have time to present our card to the lock or the reader, and we should be able to see the LED flash showing you that the two have now paired. So we can wait for the timer to run out, or we can turn the timer off or stop it early and see the results of what locks have paired with that hub. During this time, we can pair multiple locks with that hub within that 30-second window. Once we've paired the lock with the hub, we can see that the lock now comes into the lock sensor column, and it's going to show you the last 6 of the lock's MAC address. If we look over to the right, whenever one is selected, we can get the full MAC address at this point. This is going to be used later on to verify what lock you put on what door.
All right, so I put an AH40 hub just right here so you can see it. The next thing is we're going to walk through the configuration of the hub itself. We've paired the lock. Now we need to configure the hub so that it is ready to pair within PDK IO.
Yeah, we have to get the hub communicating with PDK now. So again, we'll do our quick scan. We're going to find our hub. We're going to go to the communication hub submenu, and we're going to select change IP address. This is where you're going to need what IP address, what fixed IP address that we can use on that network for the hub to take on. We type in that information here, and we're going to click OK, and it will send that information straight to the hub from our computer and give us a response back on if the hub took it or not. As we can see here, we're going to have a successful IP address set. We're going to go back to the communication hub, and now we're going to go to our configure option. In the configure window, we have multiple things that we can configure here, and once you're trained and certified on the product, you'll understand better what each of these are. But for this video, we're going to jump right into the IP settings. This is where we're going to set the network mask and the default gateway for the network that the hub is on. So these need to match what the PDK cloud node is, so the hub can now communicate to the cloud node. We just make those setting changes, and we're going to select OK at this point. The next thing we need to change here is our ACU settings. ACU standing for Access Control Unit. This is going to be the IP address of the cloud node. We want to make sure that we're putting that IP address that Cole talked about earlier. We're going to set that cloud node to a fixed IP address or a static IP address, and we're going to put that information in here. The ACU port is going to remain default 9999, and we're going to keep TLS enabled. We'll make our setting changes. We'll select OK. And then in order to send this information to the hub, we'll go to the end of our configuration questions, and we'll have an apply button. We can hit apply here at this point, and it's going to send that information up to the hub and give us a response back on everything, if things were successful or not. So we can see here that our settings were now changed, and we updated our time and date. So at this point, the hub's going to do a quick reboot and try to reach out to the PDK cloud node.
So that's all it takes from the configuration standpoint of Aperio. Now we are going to go
We
into...
actually have a couple more things we're going to do with the Aperio
Oh,
software.
I'm sorry, you're
before we
right.
jump
I
into
completely
that.
forgot. We have 2 more things there.
But
Thanks,
at this
Greg.
point, your hub should be now communicating with the PDK system. But we have 2 more settings that we recommend that you guys deal with. And again, once you receive your certification training, you'll be much more familiar with this. So the first one is we want to take note of the RFID technologies that are going to be used at this site. With the Aperio line, all of these technologies come enabled from these devices. That way, when it comes to the pairing process, whatever technology we present to activate the reader, it's going to respond to it. We want to make sure that we're taking the time to turn off any of the technologies that are not going to be used at this site. That way, you're going to get better performance and a better read response from our devices. The last setting that you're going to deal with within the Aperio programming application is going to be setting the hub and the locks into what we call customer mode. If you remember earlier, we talked about getting that encryption key from our tech support. This is where we're going to apply that encryption to the devices in this site. All of the devices come from the factory in what we call manufacturer mode. This is an open mode, unencrypted, which allows us to pair or communicate with any of the Aperio devices. When we're done setting those up at the sites, we want to apply our unique encryption key to that site, locking it down to just us, that being able to communicate to them. So we'll do that through our right-click menu option. You'll want to do this to the lock first, and then do the hub second. The software will tell you if you have a conflict when one is in the customer mode and the other is not. So pay attention to that. They both need to be in the same mode for them to communicate efficiently.
Now we're getting into the PDK side of things. I'm sorry, Greg.
Oh,
I stole your thunder there for a minute. Now we're going to show you how to configure it from the PDK side of the application. So we're going to start by navigating to our configuration page and selecting our cloud node that this will be associated with. The first thing we're going to do is navigate over to our connections tab, and you can see I actually do have an AH40 already in there. I'm going to show you what it looks like to add one. We're going to hit the plus button in the bottom right hand corner and change the connection to an Aperio connection. We're going to name it, and we are going to type in the MAC address. Now there are 2 MAC addresses on the Aperio hub. Make sure you are using the eMAC, not the RMAC. All right, when you paste the MAC address in there and hit add, it will bring you into the connection. And when we leave again, you will see that we now have 2 Aperio hubs, both with green dots. If you do not have a green dot and it is red, there's a problem somewhere. Go back to this video and try again.
Yeah, you definitely want to check your IP settings at that point, making sure you set it up correctly with the Aperio software and that things are set correctly on the PDK side.
Absolutely, and if it does turn red, if it starts green and it turns red in the future, you probably know that you didn't set a static or a reserved IP for the system. Now going over to Discovery, now everything is pretty straightforward. These Aperio lock sets are going to be adopted effectively as PDK hardware from this point on.
One thing to note here, Cole, is it's only going to find those locks that you have paired with the hub at this point. If your lock is not paired with the hub, PDK is not going to be able to find it.
So when we hit the Discover icon here, we have about 10 locks. If you have more than 10 locks, you may need to go back and pair your locks in the page. I don't show it in this video, but you can also manually add the lock by its lock set MAC address as well. So adding a device, we're going to hover over it and add a device, and we're going to name it. And I'm going to do this 3 times just so you kind of get the idea of how pretty straightforward this is. We've got number 1, we've got number 2, and we are just discovering these by the lock set's MAC address, changing the logos, and opening connection details if necessary.
So if you haven't noticed already, the MAC addresses are very important, and these are things that you can do pre-planning by making a spreadsheet, gathering the MAC address of the hubs and the locks that are going to be paired with that unique hub, because once they're brought into this system, that's going to be the only way to identify what you've put on which door.
Very true. Meticulous documentation, like you have never taken documentation before. Take down everything, the IP addresses, the MAC addresses, the gateways, the servers you are using. So as we program our final one here, we're going to hit add and go back over to devices on the top, and we'll now see that we have the Aperio lock 1, 2, and 3 added in here. If we go into Aperio lock number 1, you're going to see that you have the name, the connection, the MAC address, the logos, everything like that. If we do go down to the very bottom, we have our inputs tab. Now, a lot of Aperio locks have both the REX and the DPS built into the lock itself. So if that is something that your Aperio device has, be sure to select those inputs so that the PDK system registers them and translates that into your states page and your system events page. Pretty straightforward. All right, I think that's it for the video. I guess I come back to connections to show everything's okie dokie here. So that's it from the configuration and installation of your Aperio lock. So we'll go ahead and jump over to the Q&A, and I am going to move this out of the way and move this to the middle here, because some of these questions are for you, Greg. Starting, we got that covered. Are any of the readers Bluetooth for phones?
So the readers do come available with Bluetooth in them, but it's important to note that it is the HID Bluetooth technology that they come with. So it'll have to work with an HID Bluetooth capable mobile credential.
So in that case, if you are going to use the Bluetooth, if you do have some combination of PDK Bluetooth readers and the Aperio Bluetooth readers, those will be two separate apps. They have their own encryption keys. They're both separate entities. It'll still be pretty seamless because they just kind of run in the background, but you will need to note that there are two separate apps for that.
And this is an important thing to note too. When it comes to mobile credentials, we need to know if they're a Bluetooth-based credential or if they're NFC-based credentials, because that's going to make a difference in how they interact with the reader on the wall.
The next one was, are the lock sets outdoor rated?
So many of them are outdoor rated. You can find some of our sales sheets that are going to be available on our Intelligent Openings website that we'll get to here near the end. But yeah, a lot of those will be outdoor rated or show you that they can be used in those scenarios.
And then finally, AH30 versus AH40.
So yeah, so someone mentioned the AH30. We can note here that we have 3 types of Aperio hubs. The one that the integration is for PDK is our AH40 hub, which is IP based. The AH30 hub is RS485 based. That is going to be probably working with different softwares other than PDK. The third hub type that we have is what we call a Wiegand based hub. That's going to be a one-to-one hub and wire into a reader port available on a controller. Those can be used with any software out there. Just note that it is a one-to-one. And in this scenario, the software, the access control software, has no idea that you're using Aperio. So there's going to be some outputs on that hub that have to be wired into inputs on your access control board in order to get that monitoring. And one of those is going to be the low battery warning.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that looks to be all the questions that we have here. So I guess we'll close out with, if you do have any questions about this, reach out to your PDK sales rep, sales, plural, at ProdataKey.com. There is one more question that just came through, so we'll cover that in a sec. Or ProdataKey.com/contact if you want to reach out to your specific sales rep. It's divided into regions, and you can reach out to your specific sales rep. They will know who your Aperio rep is in the region. We have people just like Greg all throughout the U.S. That cover their respective territories. And we're happy to get you the contact information and make a warm introduction between any of you.
Yeah, so one of our goals with ASSA ABBLOY is to make sure that the ultimate end user, the person going through the door, has a good experience with the product. So that is one of the roles that we have out there. So make sure you are getting in communication with your PDK sales rep so they can connect you with an ASSA ABBLOY rep.
So let's finish up these last, looks like we have 3 more questions that came through while we wrapped up with contact info. Are there any readers that also have a keypad? We covered that a little earlier in the presentation, just briefly. Not yet, is that correct?
Right, so keypad is coming to the IN series. The IN 100 is going to come there first. That is currently in the final stages of design and going out to field trials. That should be available to order early next year. The other devices will follow. They are on the roadmap but there is no timeline for the other devices as of today.
Will adding Aperio battery box and reader to a fire door void the fire label?
This does not avoid the fire label. You'll want to just take note of the holes that you're putting into the door and that you're not going above the recommended size that would have an issue with that. So the IN100 is going to be the one that mounts on the door, same with the DL100. If you're keeping those hole sizes to, I believe it's a 1-inch maximum, it shouldn't affect the fire rating of the door.
All right, and I think these remaining questions are for me. Is there licensing that will be required? If so, will we need license agreements for both PDK and Aperio? And followed by, is the pricing for Aperio same as PDK? And the answer to that is it gets billed at the same way that any other PDK device will be billed for the software portion. You will purchase the locks as hardware, as their own entities, but for the billing and the hosting of those, that will be billed at a standard PDK device. So each Aperio lock will, of course, be its own PDK device, as well as a one-time activation charge.
On the Aperio side, the Aperio is what we call a certified product for ASSA ABBLOY, so it does require that you go through a certification presentation and course with your local ASSA ABBLOY rep. Once you get that completed, you'll be on the approved list, and you'll be able to get pricing for that from any distributor or wholesaler.
So again, that will be a situation where you'll want to reach out to your PDK sales rep, and they will loop in your ASSA ABBLOY contact for the region so that they can get you certified with Aperio product.
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps it up. Thanks everyone for jumping in. I had a ton of fun working with Greg on this. It gets lonely when I just kind of film by myself up here and I make my own presentation and I just sit here and twiddle my thumbs. It was a lot of fun working with Greg, so I'd like to thank ASSA ABBLOY for coming up with this idea actually in the first place, and then also helping us put together the resources so that we could have this. Here is the contact info for ASSA ABBLOY if you want to reach out or see their documentation directly. But if you do need to get in contact with your ASSA ABBLOY rep, be sure to reach out to our sales team and we will put you in contact with the right person.
Yep, we're happy to assist you with any of your project planning or opening needs.
Thanks everyone. We'll catch you next time.